Well, good morning and welcome to the Morning Report. My name is Willie Lawson. Today, we are talking about the Secure America Act. It's a bill headed to President Trump's desk that may end up being remembered as one of the most important immigration measures in his second term. Not because it rewrites immigration law, not because it creates a new pathway to citizenship, not because it grants amnesty, not at all, not because it changes who can legally enter the country. Mm-mm. What makes this bill significant is something a lot more basic. It puts real money behind immigration enforcement. Because for years, Americans have heard politicians from both parties explain why the federal government could not effectively enforce immigration law. There was not enough agents, there were not enough detention facilities, right? There weren't enough resources, and resources is code for money. There wasn't enough technology, there wasn't enough funding. No matter what the problem was, the answer always seems to be that enforcement was limited because the government lacked the capacity to do the job. Well, Congress has now decided to test that argument. The Secure America Act delivers roughly $70 billion in immigration enforcement funding through the remainder of President Trump's term. Now, whether you support that or oppose it, the conversation has changed. We are no longer debating whether the federal government has the resources. We are about to find out whether it has the will. Okay, now I think that that's the real story here. The headlines are going to focus on the money. The television talking heads will argue about deportations. Activists will make emotional appeals. Politicians will run to their favorite cable news network and declare either victory or disaster. But beneath all the noise, there's a simple question. What happens when the excuse disappears? Because that's what this legislation does. It removes one of the biggest excuses in modern American politics. If there weren't enough Border Patrol agents, now there can be more. If there weren't enough ICE officers, now there can be more. If there weren't enough detention facilities or detention beds, now there can be more. If there weren't enough resources to transport individuals who have already received deportation orders, now there can be more. If technology was lacking, if surveillance systems were outdated, if staffing levels were inadequate, Congress has now opened the checkbook, your checkbook. The question now becomes very, very simple. If the money is available, what results should Americans expect? That question matters because immigration has become about much more than immigration. For millions of Americans, the border debate is really a debate about trust in government, trust in institutions, trust in whether the people running the country are capable of carrying out the most basic responsibilities of governing. For years, Americans watched news reporting showing massive numbers of people crossing the southern border. They watched elected officials argue about terminology. They watched bureaucrats explain procedures. They watched experts assure them that everything was under control. And yet, many Americans looked at what they were seeing and came to a very different conclusion. They concluded that the federal government either could not or would not control the situation. Whether the perception was entirely fair is almost beside the point. Perception matters. Public confidence matters. Once citizens begin losing confidence in institutions, rebuilding that confidence becomes extraordinarily difficult. The border became one of the most visible examples of that growing distrust. Now, before anyone accuses me of being anti-immigrant, let me be clear about something. America has always had immigrants. My family history includes people who came here seeking opportunity. Yours probably does too. Immigration has helped build this country. Legal immigration has strengthened this country. Legal immigration starts businesses, serves in the military, contribute to their communities, and become part of the American story every single day. This discussion isn't about legal immigration. This discussion is about whether a sovereign nation has the right to determine who enters, who stays, and under what conditions. Every nation on earth exercises that right. Mexico does, Canada does, Japan does, and certainly Australia does, France. The United States does too, or at least it should. One of the most overlooked voices in the entire debate belongs to legal immigrants themselves. Think about the person who followed every rule, the person who filled out every form, the person who paid every damn fee, the person who waited years for approval, the person who respected the process because they believed the process mattered. What message do we send that individual if immigration laws become optional? What message do we send when people who follow the rules watch others bypass the system entirely? Fairness matters. Justice matters. Consistency matters. Credibility. A functioning immigration system requires public confidence, and public confidence requires enforcement. Whether you're a conservative, a liberal, independent, or somebody who doesn't care about politics at all, that principle should not be controversial. Now, what makes the Secure America Act politically fascinating is that it changes the scoreboard. Because again, for years, both sides have argued about causes. Republicans argued that enforcement was inadequate. The left argued that borders reforms were necessary. Advocacy groups argued about humanitarian concerns. Economists argued about labor markets. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone has a theory and a narrative. But theories eventually run into reality. At some point, results are going to matter. And that's where we're headed right now. The administration will have more resources. The agencies will have more resources. The infrastructure will have more resources. And that means Americans can begin evaluating outcomes other than excuses. And let's be honest about something else. Republicans now have responsibilities they didn't have before. It's easy to campaign on promises. It's simple to criticize the failures of previous administration. It's easy to tell voters what should have happened. Governing is different. Governing means producing measurable results. So if conservatives have argued that stronger enforcement will improve the situation, then they should welcome accountability. They should welcome transparency. And they should welcome metrics. How many deportation orders are actually carried out? How many criminal aliens are actually removed? How many cartel-linked operations are disputed? How many illegal crossings are prevented? How many visa overstays are identified and addressed? How much progress is actually achieved? Those questions are not attacks. Those questions are accountability. And accountability should never scare people who are confident in their policies. Now, the left is already framing this legislation in dramatic terms. Some are describing it as a massive expansion of immigration enforcement. Others are warning about humanitarian consequences. Some are predicting widespread controversy. Frankly, some of those debates are inevitable. They were going to happen. Whenever government expands its operational capacity, the question about oversight should be asked. Conservatives understand that better than most people. We don't trust government automatically, and we don't assume government always gets it right. We understand that the importance of the checks and balances system. We understand the importance of transparency. and the importance of oversight. These concerns should not disappear simply because policy objective is popular. Effective enforcement and accountability are not enemies. They're actually partners. A government agency should be capable of doing its job and capable of explaining how it's doing that job. Now, but here's something that I find really interesting. The House vote was incredibly close. Two votes that separated passage from failure. The vote was 214 to 212. That tells us something about important about our country. Immigration remains one of the defining political issues of our time. And not because politicians want it to be, and not because voters want it to be. Americans continue ranking border security among their major concerns. They also continue asking questions. They continue demanding answers. They continue looking for evidence that government is capable of responding to the challenges. This legislation is a response. Now, whether it is the right response remains a matter of political debate, but it is undeniably a response. Now, I also suspect that many Americans are less interested in ideological arguments than political professionals realize. Most people don't spend their evenings reading policy papers. Most folks don't obsess over legislative language. Most folks judge government the same way they judge almost everything else. Does it work? That's the standard. Does it freaking work? Not whether it sounds good, not whether it polls well, not whether the activists approve. Does it work? If communities feel safer, if the border becomes more secure, if the immigration system becomes more credible, supporters will argue that the investment was justified. Now, if those outcomes fail to materialize, critics will have a powerful argument of their own. Either way, reality will eventually have the final word. The broader lesson may extend beyond immigration itself. In recent years, Americans have become increasingly skeptical of institutions. They have become skeptical of experts and bureaucracies and promises and assurances. Much too often, citizens feel like they're being asked to trust without verification. They're told that programs are working without seeing evidence. They're being asked to have faith. They're told that policies are succeeding without seeing results. They are told that concerns are misplaced without having their concerns actually addressed. They also are told that concerns are again, the approach rarely builds confidence. Confidence comes from performance. Confidence comes from competence. Confidence comes from seeing results that match the promises made. This is why Secure America Act represents more than an immigration funding package. It represents a test for Congress and the administration and federal agencies, a test for policymakers who have argued that stronger enforcement would produce better outcomes. The funding fight is largely over. The implementation fight is just beginning. The excuses are becoming harder to make. The expectations are becoming higher. The scrutiny is about to increase. And frankly, that's exactly how it should be. If taxpayers are going to provide $70 billion, we deserve answers. We deserve transparency. We deserve measurable goals and regular updates. We deserve evidence that our money is being spent and accomplishing something meaningful. Government should never be afraid of that level of accountability. Government should actually welcome it. Now, as we move forward, don't get distracted by the political theater because there will be plenty of it. There will be dramatic headlines. There will be emotional speeches. There will be activists marching. There will be politicians fundraising. There will be pundits predicting the end of civilization as we know it. That's what happens in modern politics. But beneath all of that noise, keep your eyes on the simple question that matters. Now that Congress has provided the resources, what happens next? Because that's the question history will remember. Not the speeches, not the hashtags, not the press conference results. Just results. The American people have heard promises before. They've heard plans before. They've heard explanations before. What they want now is performance. What they want to know is whether government can do what it says it can do. They want to know whether laws still have meaning and whether institutions can function effectively. They want to know whether electoral leaders are capable of delivering on their commitments. Now, the Secure America Act will not answer those questions today. President Trump's signature won't answer those questions tomorrow either. Only time and results can answer them. But one thing is certain. The debate has entered a new phase. The argument is no longer about whether the federal government has the resources. Congress answered that question. The argument is now whether those resources will provide the outcome Americans have been promised. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. It's a debate worth having. My name is Willie Lawson, and this is Morning Report. Bye now. Until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We'll see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.